And we are live. What is up, everybody? Aaron the dog and Lucky Locks picks back for week 4 of the Contender Series 2025 Dana White variety. Coming off of a pretty good week last week. It was, chalky, so it wasn't all that hard last week, but, the ball went through the hoop. Lucky Locks, how you doing?
Not too bad, man. I can't complain. I think this card has some pretty good fighters on it. I'm actually excited to watch on Tuesday. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this one and seeing where your head's at and what the deal is this week, because I think we got some good fighters here on a couple of these
we have
fights.
some competitive lines for once as well. So I think also obviously competitive fights. So we'll get right into it. It's 5 fights still. Starting at 145, Tommy, 2 undefeated fighters, 8-0, 7-0. Tommy McMillan coming down from 155, taking on David Magoyan, the Miami fighter of American Top Team MMA Lab here as well. David Magoyan, mostly wrestler, gets in there. Looks to wrestle. He's a young guy still at 21 years old, 5'6", of pretty much the pure wrestling frame. Best win being John DeJesus. He took him to a decision, so, nothing to scoff at there. But, other than that, I mean, he's knocking out Luciano Ramos in his last fight back in May. Had a fight in LFA. As well, but he's fought CFFC, tough enough. He's fought all over the place. Pretty much fought the same way everywhere. I think you can expect him to fight the same way against Tommy McMillan. Tommy McMillan's undefeated. He's a good striker, good finisher overall. Fighting at lightweight mostly in his career, and then coming down to 145 for this fight. Hasn't fought a great level of competition. He's finished them all inside of round 1 and inside of like 3 minutes. I think both these guys are kind of, just young, untested against adversity. And Magoyan being 21, I just feel there's more potential here. And I think the straight route with the wrestling. So I got Magoyan. But if he gets stuffed on the wrestling, this line's going to look flipped or worse, because I just think on the feet he's going to be a little bit lost against McGowan. If he can't get the takedowns going, I think he does. So I'll take McGowan here and probably gets a finish somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Yeah, McMillan, champion in Fusion Fight League in Montana. Obviously, we all know, training with Tim Welch and Sean O'Malley. And I think Tim Welch saw him fight back in their home state of Montana, brought him out to Arizona. Was supposed to fight Austin Bashi on last year's Contender Series, got injured. He won 2 more fights in the meantime. And I believe he was a state champion wrestler in Montana in high school. I think Magoyan is, not to be mean, but is like a real wrestler, on a different level for me personally. And, there's not a ton of tape on McMillan that I've been able to see, because, these fights end early, and a lot of them are on this Fusion Fight League, which isn't really like a major promotion with a ton of footage. But there's a lot of hype on McMillan. Magoyan is Armenian/Russian and one of Arman Sarukian's guys. He's at American Top Team, fought on MMA series and Open FC in Russia. Then, you touched on LFA, CFFC, Tough Enough in the US. And I think pretty clearly has fought the better level of competition, in my view. I think he's a very good wrestler. Striking, not great. I think it's, quote unquote, fine. His cardio seems pretty good. I kind of went back and forth here. Tommy McMillan, I think, is pretty decent. But it's just like Magoyan has a real good skill set that I've seen, a real concrete skill set that, you mentioned clear path that he can use here. And I've seen him do it against real guys. And I just haven't seen that with McMillan. So, I'm open to being wrong here. To be honest, I don't really have a good read on how good McMillan actually is. But, Magoyan, I've seen it against guys that are half decent. So that's where I'm going with this one. But I'm not super enthusiastic, as enthusiastic as some other people are about his side.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people going nuts for McGoyan, and I mean, like I just find it interesting, like the over 1.5 minus 200, and with a guy who's not gone 2 minutes. So like I mean, it's just a little bit interesting there. A lot of unknowns. I admit it on my side too. I think that McGoyan's the better wrestler. He looks like the better wrestler. He feels like the better wrestler, but like again, I think McMillan's camp has to have a good idea coming into this fight of what McGoyan wants to do. And McGoyan's not a big 145er at all. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons not to like fall in love with the minus 180. And I get if you're on the McMillan side, but it's unknowns on both sides. Overall, a pass. But I think it's an interesting fight. I'm just not sure there's a contract that comes out of this because I think these two could kind of stretch each other for the first time in their young careers. So we'll see. Next fight, LFA special on Tuan Ho, the highlight, coming back against Chapelin Enrique. Really good fight here. Very, very interesting. Chapelin coming in on short notice here. On Duan, coming back after getting, highlighted on the other end against Kavanaugh. There came back and beat the great Jimmy Natividad in 16 seconds to earn his way back onto the Contender Series. So let me tell you, if you lose on the Contender Series, prepare for a long trip back to get back here by having to finish a guy in 16 seconds who is 3-4. Great stuff there. Minus 1,500 favor for Antoine. Was supposed to face Frank Silva. I think that his fight got a little harder, frankly, here. I don't think Frank Silva was an easy fight either, but I think this is a little bit tougher. Eduardo Chapelin Henrique, very dynamic 14-2 fighter, 29 years old. So, time is kind of now to get into the UFC. Had that slip up against Davi Bittencourt back in 2022. But other than that, he's looked pretty damn good out with LFA. Has a loss to Clayton Rodriguez as well. Very good striker. Last two fights, finishing some very high level of opponents early here. The short notice is, the big question mark here. I just have to imagine at 29 years old, he was definitely preparing for a opportunity probably at some point in the season. I think he looked relatively in shape at his weigh-in. I just don't have a reason not to go with Chapelin here. I think Chapelin gives Antoine another highlight here, and I'm a little bit surprised. I guess the short notice might be keeping it a little bit closer, but I think this is not a minus 145 fight right here. So I definitely already have a play on the money line for Chapelin. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, so Chapelin, LFA champ at flyweight. I didn't tape him specifically for this fight. I was away this weekend, but I've watched like the last however many fights.
Exactly.
I literally just watched the one he just had. Just as a fan. I've watched pretty much all of his fights since coming to LFA in 2023, and I was impressed with him immediately when I saw him back then. Very good striker, very accurate, good shot selection. I think he hits really hard for this division as well. And, he did lose to Joseph Morales on the Ultimate Fighter. I think Morales is a much better submission grappler than Antoine Ho is. Antoine Ho is, he's a staple of the Southwestern U.S. scene. He's an LFA regular. Fought a Contender Series last year, had a tough matchup with Kavanaugh, but he's a good striker. I think he's a decent grappler too. He's well-rounded, maybe even a little bit underrated in the grappling. And I think grappling probably is his path here, but personally, I don't know how realistic that is. Both of these guys are flyweights in the LFA. Chapelin is the champion, not Antoine Ho. I think this is probably a striking fight. For me, Chapelin is the better striker. And, to your point about the line, I think that if this fight was, for the LFA championship, Chapelin is probably a bigger favorite than he is here, and probably not by a small amount. Granted, there's the 2 weight cuts. I get it, but I'm just not in the business of picking or betting on guys, on a hope or a prayer that they're compromised from a weight cut or from anything else, which is, external to the fight itself, right? It's like, I don't think Antoine is better than Chapelin. So I'm not going to pick him because I think maybe Chapelin is hurt, or he's recovering from an injury that he had, or he had a bad weight cut, or he's cutting weight too many times. It's just that's not a good enough reason for me.
No.
If I thought this was a 50-50 fight, maybe I would. But I feel like one guy is somewhere between minus 200 and minus 230 on a normal day. And now he's like minus 140 or whatever he's at. That's good enough for me. I bet Chapelin here. I think he's the better guy.
Yeah. I mean, this is very layman, but when this matchup was announced, I said Antoine is dead. Honestly, and then it's minus 145 in 2025 UFC MMA. That just, UFC, it doesn't really happen. So I also agree there. And, 29 years old at flyweight, there's, not going to be a ton of opportunities here. And just Antoine, we know what he does. Next fight, 155 fight. And what a weird fight this is. This is the weirdest fight of the night for me. Samuel Silva taking on rat garbage himself, Manuel Nalo. Manuel Nalo has a chance to make the UFC in 2025. Mandel Nalo. Samuel Silva, Cage Warriors champ over there, beat George Hardwick. Went 5 rounds in that fight. Huge upset, but really, really impressive also from a guy who is predominantly a finisher, but in, a few of these tougher fights, Rodrigo Ledillo fight went, the distance as well. And that was a very close fight over in LFA. When he's been kind of pushed, he does, tend to go a little farther. He's been, in there with some very good guys, Elvis Brenner back in the day as well. He's just kind of been all over the place, well-traveled, well-tested. I mean, very ready for this opportunity. 4-5 fight win streak coming into this fight as well. And again, beating George Hardwick over with Cage Warriors there for the championship. Rat garbage. I mean, he's been around for a while, 33 years old now, TriStar. Very, very well-rounded fighter he's become. I'll give him credit for that. The level of competition he's faced in the last 4 since losing to Piccolotti with Bellator, not the best. Piccolotti and Nick Brown both, kind of had a similar sort of approach, grind down and eventually, break Mandel. You also had the fight with Achilles Mota with the leg kick, nerve damage. Weird. There's a certain amount of pressure and adversity that you give Mandel rat garbage Nalo, and he will give in. I think Samuel Silva has that sort of fighting game plan. Glenn Bod mentions a round 2 or 3 maybe for Silva. I like that as well. I do think round 1, will be interesting to kind of see the approach here. And then Rich Franklin, big fan of the show. Thank you very much. But yeah, I am going to lean with Samuel Silva, but I'm a little confused with how much I don't believe in rat garbage here. So, as of now, I don't have a bet, but it just feels like Samuel Silva just breaks him down, pressures him, gets the grappling going, and eventually gets a submission somewhere in the second or third. But, I think that the striking of Mando Nalo, can be interesting and could, frustrate Samuel Silva if the takedowns are working. So overall, I'm running in circles here. Lucky, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this is a fun fight. Nalo out of Montreal trains at TriStar, had a, somewhat notable Bellator career, went 4-3 with a no contest, 4-0 since returning to the regionals. Super lightweight champion at Samurai MMA. That's 165 pounds. And, Nalo, he's a good striker. He's got nice hands and has kind of a sneaky amount of submissions on the regionals. And he's got kind of a half decent grappling game that becomes especially pronounced when the level of competition is reduced a little bit. I do not see that being a factor in this matchup. I don't think that's something that we're going to see. Kind of more of a flat-footed stance, not really one of those bouncy type strikers. He's a good kicker. He can mix it up to all 3 targets with the legs, and he's finished fights with head kicks, leg kicks, knees. Decently well-rounded guy. I'm not sure he has the same snap that he had in his younger days, but I definitely wouldn't say that he's washed. I think he's pretty savvy guy. Samuel Silva, 13-4-1, started his career 3-3, and has gone 10-1-1 since then. Currently has won 5 fights in a row, including, as you mentioned, the Cage Warriors Lightweight Championship against George Hardwick. That's a really great win. Also won both of his fights in LFA. Silva, I think he's pretty quick on his feet. He can, get out of range quickly on defense. Hardwick was kind of dotting up his lead leg in the first round of their fight, and I do think that Nall is a better kicker than George Hardwick. The high kicks and some of that stuff that Silva throws sometimes, I could see Nallo kind of maybe initiating some grappling there, but like I said, I don't really think that's a super viable path. Silva has good kick to the legs himself, and Nallo stands pretty flat, like I mentioned, and we've seen his legs also be compromised as well, and sometimes he doesn't really deal with damage super well. But I think Nallo, the long jab to the body and head is going to be able to land here. I think Silva's kind of hittable. I'm not sure that Silva's going to be able to get a ton of grappling going early. Nallo, I think, is pretty solid defensively early in the fight. I think what Glenn Bosch shouted out Silva round 2, round 3, I could see that happening. Nallo, I think, has the better experience. Silva's last win obviously was excellent, right? That's a massive regional name in George Hardwick, and went 5 hard rounds with them, won the last 2 rounds. But I would say, Nallo having 8 fights in a major promotion, I think is the better strength of schedule overall personally. Nallo has only lost to solid guys. Silva did get knocked out in the first round by Guilherme Duin in 2023, and has some losses, like one to Elvis Brenner that were a long time ago that I'm not going to hold any of those against him. But, that one I just mentioned was within recent memory, and, Nallo is, in my opinion, a lot better than that guy. So I wanted to bet Nallo in this fight. I was hoping the number would be a lot bigger than it is. So, at this current price, it's going to be a pass. But yeah, for the sake of the pick, I'm going to go ahead and pick him.
I respect it. This is it's just strange to me. Silva's lined as a bigger favorite than, Henrique in the last fight, minus 155, plus 120 on Nallo. I'm rooting for Silva here. So personally, but I just am not a rat garbage believer myself. Or whatever he goes by now. What is it? Mango? He's always going to be rat garbage to me. So, all right, moving on to very interesting fight at 155. Theo Haig getting his opportunity because why not at 185. Cezary Olejniczuk, 15-3 Polish striker, 25 years old here. He's looking very, very good. I think Cezary is probably one of my favorite middleweight prospect on the Contender Series that's been announced so far for the season. I think he's got a lot of promise. He's looked very, very good. Knocked out Tom Breeze pretty emphatically with FNC back in February. And Tom Breeze did not make weight for that fight and did not look like he wasn't on steroids for that fight either. But take that for what it will. Tom Breeze win in 2025 still holds a little bit of water. He beat Chris Fishgold back in the day, in just a fight where I don't know why Chris Fishgold was fighting. And that fight at that point, overall, Cezary, pretty clear what he's going in there to do. He's going to stand and bang. Theo Haig, clear what he's going to go in there and do. He's going to stand until he's shooting for a double leg and trying not to get punched in the face. Last fight, same deal as all of his fights, basically, where he's working to get the submission. He eventually got it, but against Saeed Magomed Abugayev, he didn't look good at points. He looked a little panicked. That's a fighter that has a pretty clear game plan on how you beat him. I would say he mildly passed that. Just other wins on his, the Dylan Dubitz, fight, probably his best win there. Went to the second round in that fight as well. But, he kind of just keeps pushing the same game plan throughout the fight. The 29-year-old wrestler here, he's going to try to wrestle Cesare. I think that Cesare is going to be very ready for the takedowns. I think he knocks out Theo Haig inside of the first round.
Yeah, this is another fight I'm looking forward to. A lot of fights I like on this card. Haig 6-0, aka Guy, been on LFA and those Bellator prelim fights. All 6 of his wins by submission. He's a good grappler and he knows how to get to the back. The striking is kind of meh, just kind of a means to get in on the legs. And Oleszejczuk, 15-3 out of Poland, obviously the brother of Michał Oleszejczuk. He's a 5-time champion in Fenn. Some pretty good wins: Adrian Zelensky, Chris Fishgold, Piotr Struss, Tom Breese. Losses were a long time ago at the very start of his career, and the most recent loss was Alibek Rasulov, who is a very good fighter. He's 14-0. He's signed to 1. I bet on him in his 1 debut, and he's got quick hands. Oleszejczuk goes to the body and head. Beautiful combo to win against Breese in his last fight, and I think it's a pretty clear grappler versus striker fight. I think, each of them should be superior and, their individual kingdom, so to speak. Oleszejczuk, I think, has fought a lot better competition and just been in way bigger fights against better guys. And, Haig does really well to get to positions, but I don't know if his control is necessarily the best. In the fight against Dibitz, Dibitz was able to escape back control a number of times, but just wasn't the caliber of striker that Oleszejczuk is, and wasn't really able to make Haig pay on the feet. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think Oleszejczuk will be able to make him pay. He will be able to, extract the currency in that regard, and just has a lot more experience and better experience, in my opinion. And yeah, I'm on the Cesare side as well.
Yeah, and again, I think Cesare, if you're looking to get, Chaplin to plus money, him and Cesare and Chaplin, that's about as safe of a favorite parlay on this card, I think, as you can get, and you'll get the plus money. So, I think he takes care of Theo Haig pretty impressively. All right. 170 main event here, welterweights. John Paul Lebosnani taking on Jack Congdon here. I think this is going to be a very good fight. Honestly, I think this could be, one that kind of is a sleeper. I know it's the featured fight. I'm not sure if that's really how they do it or not, but I just feel like this fight, is a very good fight. I really like John Paul Mufasa quite a bit. 26 years old now, just really solid, mostly grappling, but, also very good stand-up fighter, has a wide arsenal on the feet, on the ground, very good control, goes for his submissions very quickly as well. The Keegan Genrich fight, last fight, looked really good on the feet. Then, transitioned to the ground very impressively, caught that triangle on a good opponent there. Kukalis, pieced him up on the feet, wobbled him quite a few times in that fight, nearly put away Adam Wamsley very impressively for what that's worth. Was stopped by Jacoby Jones. Jacoby Jones, not a bad fighter at all. Just overall, I do like the game of Jean Paul quite a bit. I just think that, the issue with him is at 170, he's very, very small. And, with Jack Congdon, guys, not the most technical fighter. Dude's tough. Throws pretty hard. I think he's more well-rounded than he gets credit for. Again, I think he could, keep this more in the boxing realm. I get he has a couple submissions, 2 of his last 3, but I still think for this fight, on the feet is, where I think he can, pressure a little more. I'll take John Paul still in this fight. I just feel like the grappling is going to be enough for him to get it to the ground and eventually get the finish. But I think in the long run, 155 is where Jean Paul is going to have a chance in the UFC. So I'll be interested to see if he's able to get the finish on Jack Condon or not. But I think this is going to be a good fight. Should be interesting. But I'll take John Paul.
Yeah, so Congdon fighting out of Massachusetts has fought his entire career on Cage Titans. The one loss came to Jonathan Piersma. And, pretty long guy, 6'2", 75-inch reach. Traditional martial arts guy, I believe. It's karate, taekwondo, maybe both. Good kicker, good at range, not quite as good in the pocket, in my opinion, but pretty solid striker, I thought. I didn't really like the way he looked in the second round of the Zach Davis fight. Got the knockout there, but, he was looking tired and slow. Could give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he had expended a little bit too much energy prior to that. But the only other time he's ever been out of round one was against Piersma, and he got submitted in the third there. And didn't look as tired as he did in that Davis fight. Lebosniani, California guy, good jiu-jitsu player. Most of his fights have been in LFA. He's 7-1 in the promotion. Also was the lightweight champ in Lights Out. And losses: Jacoby Jones, Spike Carlisle. Those are good regional names, and I think it's safe to say he's going to be the better grappler in this fight. Not as good of a striker, but I think he can be competitive. And, I think probably he's going to try to crowd Congdon, close the distance. And I think that Lebosniani can land in the pocket. I think it's more really at range where, he'll be a little bit outmatched. But, yeah, I think if he closes the distance, gets into the dirty areas and gets on the hips, he can get the victory here. So, I'm going to go with Lebosniani as well. I'm going to join you on that side.
Yep. And I mean, minus 520. The biggest favorite on the card is Lebosniani. I don't know about that. Cesare should be the biggest favorite on the card, in my opinion. But either way, I think it's a very interesting card. It's another card that feels very LFA adjacent to me because a ton of these guys fought on LFA. I believe we agreed on all the fights, though. We're both on Magoyan. No bet. We both like Chaplin and rather like him a lot, especially at the price. Both tentatively on, or I'm on Silva, you're on Nalo. There's our disagreement.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Nalo.
That's fine. I think that's a good fight to disagree on, and honestly, I'm interested to sit back and watch that one. Cesare, we both like in that spot, and then Jean Paul, but no bet on those last two. Overall. I don't really want to predict contracts because at this point, it's if you get a finish, you get a contract. So I don't know, 3 out of 5 contracts or something. But 2 cents bet Tommy McMillan. I think that's a popular underdog. I haven't seen a soul on Antoine Ho, which makes me very nervous for tomorrow night. This feels like Ricardo Palencia back in Bellator. I hope he doesn't snap his leg tomorrow night. If he does, oh well. But yeah, should be a good card. Lucky, you got any bets or anything to plug before we take off?
Yeah, I did bet on Chaplin. I like that side. It's I feel like the line's in a little bit because of the double weight cut and the short notice and this or that. But I think the line is short. On a normal day, and yeah, I just like Chaplin. I think he's the better fighter. So at this price, I'm happy to get involved. Other than that, follow me on Twitter at LuckyLocksPicks, and that's all. It's the only thing I got to promote here.
Absolutely, yeah. We will be back next Monday, closer to prior regular time. But whenever we're on, just everybody has notifications on. Once it's live, we're live. So if you want a better channel, there's a lot of better channels out there, I'm sure. So for Lucky Locks, for myself, 2 cents, Glimbot, Justin, all the crew out there, the Dome. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Glimbot 5000, shout out to you. You're the reason the show's back on, to be honest with you. So appreciate the messages, man. I'll see you all later. Peace.